I'm just going to point this out, but everyone got a lot braver when Suge Knight got locked up.
Go subscribe, yeah, subscribe.
Death Row Records is in the motherfucking his house. And if that bitch can't swim, she bound to drizzle. We got Snoop back on death row. Never thought that I would say that statement, but kudos to Snoop, who bought the label that made him and almost broke him, did him really shady like they did all the other artists out there, but he's back. He had the last laugh, becoming now the owner of the legendary hip-hop label, the label that ushered in the solo career of Dr. Dre, the career of Snoop Dogg, furthered the career of Tupac, the Dog Pound, Kurupt, Nate Dogg, all those dudes. Arguably, no, not even arguably, not arguably, the most infamous label of all time. They launched the G-Funk sound, but they were directly involved in the East Coast, West Coast beef. And this album and announcement of buying this label came just in time for Snoop Dogg, as he's about to do one of his most high-profile performances ever at the Super Bowl with Dr. Dre, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, and Mary J. Blige. And I noticed that Mary dropped an album too. So Kendrick, let that be your cue. You need to drop something. Snoop and Mary already did. They're capitalizing on everybody that's going to see him on the Super Bowl. Kendrick, where are you at? I got all my nostalgia over here. I got the source from when Dre left Death Row, Suge on the cover at the height of the East Coast, West Coast beef. We got Snoop and Dre over here. Another cover with Snoop. I got my Doggystyle CD. I got my Chronic CD. All nostalgia right here. That's why I'm here for Back on Death Row. The album starts with Still Smoking, and I wasn't sure if I was going to review this album or even listen to it. I don't listen to a lot of new Snoop albums these days, but when I heard this first track, I knew that I had to review it because they are using the intro for the Chronic beat, the one where we heard Snoop Dogg basically laying out the agenda for Death Row on the Chronic, the first proper album that dropped off of that label after the Deep Cover soundtrack. Like I said, Snoop laid out the agenda for the label, so it's only proper that he includes it here because this is the new agenda. This is the future of Death Row. Snoop brings in the nostalgia, mentioning the old roster. In his lyrics, he says, I think about Pac, I think about Suge, I think about Nate, I think I left a small piece on my plate. And at the end of it, as we hear that, yeah, I don't love no more, I fully expect to hear, yeah, use a penguin looking motherfucker, and for Dre Day to come on after that. But instead we get Gunsmoke, which was produced by High Tech. High Tech seemed to disappear for a while, but he's been dropping a few beats lately. Last I heard from him was on that Russ project, Chomp 2, which I didn't really like his production there, but this one reminds me more of his old style. It's a real nice beat. Then we got Coming Back. And speaking of old styles, this is that G-Funk right here, the kind of beat that Snoop cut his teeth on when he was first coming into the game. And that G-Funk sound, it was highly influenced by Parliament Funkadelic and Roger Troutman. That vocoder that you hear in here, that comes from Roger, just like the vocal that was on California Love. And this is produced by Battlecat, definitely a fitting track for a Death Row release. Snoop, lyrically, though, hasn't said shit since the 90s, and he still doesn't right here. Can we get the DOC? Since this is Death Row, can the DOC come back and write some lyrics for this dude? Sandwich Bag, real nice beat here from Bink. It's a slow burn, taking a while to develop and add multiple musical elements. I like Snoop's wordplay here too. He says, all I ever needed was one mic, Scottie Pippen. Then we get Conflicted. Here we got one of the few standout tracks on the album, and the reason for that is because we get the new Gangstar, Nas and Hit Boy. The beat definitely sounds like something that would have been on Magic, as does Nas's chorus. Unfortunately, we don't get a verse from Nas, but that's okay. This song still works because Snoop, not as inspired as Nas by Hit Boy, but he does come through with some adequate lyrics, calling out some old school names that maybe a lot of modern hip hop fans forgot, from Slick Rick to Redhead Kingpin to Special Ed. Doggystylin', bass-heavy beat by Soopafly for Snoop to spit autobiographical lyrics on, recapping his origin story. Crip ya enthusiasm. All right, I love hip-hop, obviously. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm too. Huge fan of that show and Larry David, but I don't think we need the two to mix. Yes, they're sampling the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song here, that whimsical, classical theme song that is very out of place on a hip-hop album. And this just ain't working, especially when Snoop tries to sing along to the tune of the song. And maybe this would have worked out better if they would have got the theme going, if the lyrics would have stuck a little more to something like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, like putting Snoop in some kind of awkward situation. But it's not really talking about being awkward. In fact, it's the opposite. He's talking about going to a party and getting with a bunch of women. So that's not really a situation that we might see on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. In fact, kind of the opposite. House I Built, another good Hit Boy beat here, and I might be a little harsh on Snoop's lyrical content throughout this review, but in this one, he's telling us it's really more than hip hop for him, and it really doesn't matter if he's about the lyrics or not, because he's involved in crypto and investments, turning his investments into higher returns. All in all, that's what the purchase of Death Row Records was about. It's an investment. So we don't need to think of Snoop as a rapper per se. He's got many more things going on. And as he explains on this, his next goal is to buy the masters for Doggystyle, which he should have. Whoever has them better give Snoop a discount on those masters. Outside the Box, very happy to hear Nate Dogg featured here. Nate Dogg was the guy. Every song featuring Nate Dogg from the early 90s to the early 2000s was fire. If you wanted to have a fire song and a fire hook, you had to get Nate Dogg, and that's exactly what he did and brought to every track. You can still hear on this track, and really probably my favorite Snoop album aside from Doggystyle was the 213 project that he did with Warren G and Nate Dogg. If you haven't heard that, please check that out. 213 The Hard Way. Jersey in the Rafters, another Hit Boy track. Snoop's trying to get that King's disease working with Hit Boy so much. It works on this track, but it ain't working like King's disease. But we do have The Game, who's fresh off his high-profile track with Kanye called Easy, and he comes in sounding really hungry on this one. Maybe Game and Hit Boy, maybe that's the one that'll work out. We'll see. Pop Pop, not a fan of DaBaby, never was before he'd been on all his shenanigans, but he's got an adequate verse here. I do actually kind of like it better than a lot of the verses I've heard from him, and he's fresh off of his appearance at a bowling alley. It's In the Air, produced by Nottz. You know those MCs that we praise for doing it for decades because there's just so few of them, people like Nas and Hove, who can hold it down and make good music decade after decade. For producers, Nottz is on that list. And this is another standout track. Uncle Murda coming through with a good verse saying, "You in a gang, you'd be a fool to think everyone loyal. My kids don't know nothing about struggling, all of them spoiled. That's why I do this shit, thought y'all knew this shit. If I can't put food on their table, I'ma start shooting shit." The chorus is also nice on this, and I'm gonna drink to this track. I'm sipping on a Harpoon double IPA, coming in at 9%. Had to bring out the big guns for my old favorite Snoop, and I'm enjoying this beer. Album is okay, and this beer meshes very well with this track. We Don't Gotta Worry No More reunites Snoop with Wiz Khalifa after their collaborative album and hit single Young, Wild, and Free. This is definitely not as catchy as that. Frankly, not a lot going on this particular track. Then the album rounds out with Snoopy Don't Go. It's kind of a joke song slash outro at the same time, but we got more good production from Battlecat though, who really held it down throughout this project. And I like at the end of this where Snoop says, yeah, if you want to go to a record label where the executive producer is in the videos, rapping and dancing, come to Death Row. Implying that basically he'll be in the videos, and that's a play on the famous statement that Suge said at the 1995 Source Awards about Puff Daddy that escalated the East Coast, West Coast beef probably more than any other statement made by anybody else. And it's all ironic now that Snoop is saying Death Row will be the label where the executive producer is dancing and rapping in the videos. I'm just going to point this out, but everyone got a lot braver when Suge Knight got locked up. Nobody was saying shit. Snoop wasn't buying Death Row before he was locked up. Now that he's in there and they've seen that he's going to be there for a while, then Snoop made his move. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I like that Snoop owns that. Suge ran it into the ground anyway. So here's to the future of Death Row. I don't expect too much from Snoop these days. In fact, I do catch a single here and there, but I don't think I've listened to a brand new album from him in a long time, probably at least a decade. Honestly, I was just here for the nostalgia and the statement that he made by purchasing Death Row. The statement in that purchase is bigger than any statement that he makes on this project. Because throughout much of this, I was reminded why I don't really listen to him. He just doesn't have much to offer artistically anymore. Lyrically, he's not saying anything at all. And he really hasn't refined his flow since the early 90s. He's been sliding by on his voice and his name alone. The saving grace here, though, is the production, which is really pretty consistent throughout. Hit Boy, Nottz, Battlecat put forth some good instrumentals, and for that, I'm gonna bump this up to a 6 out of a 12 pack. Thank you for watching my review of label president and CEO of Death Row Records, Snoop Dogg, back on Death Row. If you like this, go ahead and hit like now and hit me up in the comments. If you didn't like it, also let me know why in the comments. I drop hip hop and hops related content consistently, so subscribe to my channel now. And until I see you next time, keep buzzing.
Fucking man says subscribe. But if he's on his channel saying that somebody's album is better than mine, unsubscribe to him.
No, your album's the best, man.
There you go. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Subscribe.